This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Football's in the air. Everybody can smell it. It is great to be here on the latest edition of DocNJock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy, as always, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. We got a lot to talk about. We got to talk about the Lions and training camp. It's time. This Sunday, you will get reports of what the Detroit Lions are doing on the football field. Concerns, players we got to talk about. Are the Lions being respected properly? Because it is crazy. Where on one hand, you have some pundits saying, look, day in and day out, the Lions are Super Bowl caliber, all the way down to concerns and pundits saying, this defense scares the crap out of me. They're not good enough to withstand the pressure that's going to be put upon them by the likes of the Chiefs and the Seahawks. So there's so much to talk about, and it is probably the biggest gamut of reactions that you're going to get. You're going to have the staunch supporters that love everything about the Lions, and then you're going to have those panicking and worrying that one injury, one situation, one misstep from Jameson Williams could derail the entire season, and I love it. I love that tightrope of discussion about these Detroit Lions, and we'll dive right into it. As well, we will talk about what happened with the Pistons and maybe the emergence of a young player that we can talk about and follow for the course of his young career. We'll talk all about that, and then Adam brought something to the table in regards to the Women's World Cup, which kicks off. So I'll get his sense of what's going on there because women's soccer, I have basically don't tap into other than the fringe reports of some of the big news. So we'll check in with the World Cup and the Detroit Tigers, who are kind of, still doing their thing after the All-Star break. Cuz, what's up, man? Can you smell it? Can you feel it? Football's back.
It's palpable, man. It's like there. You can almost reach out and touch it. It's exciting. Like this is what we live for. We love this stuff. You know what I'm saying? We're mere weeks out from the actual regular season getting underway. We're weeks out from college football getting underway. You've got training camp starting. And look, with it starting, like you said, there are some concerns. There are some pundits talking. And we do have to take a bit of a deeper dive and look at these Detroit Lions and maybe hash out some of these things that other pundits are throwing out there. So if you want, I'm ready to kick this off. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready for a jam-packed football-filled Detroit Sports Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the years where many people are glued. I mean, the Lions on Wednesday, 10 a.m., within probably 60 seconds had 5,000 people in the ticket queue. For me personally, I would have assumed that it would have been chaotic trying to get tickets to training camp. You probably would have had to get there 5 minutes early and use multiple devices. I like it before where you just show up and first come, first serve, because the space is limited, but it is disappointing when everybody gets 4 tickets and you got to wait and the queue is slow, and Ticketmaster always has those issues. But it goes to show you, man, the hype train is real and the attention to this football team is there. It's one of the most anticipated football seasons here locally in a long time, and I love it. I love the fact that the every aspect of this football team from the top of the roster with Jared Goff all the way down to the international player that they got in Max Percher, the last guy on the roster, number 91. Everybody is interesting. Everybody has something to bring to the table, and people are interested in all of it. Look, you throw out a story about a potential wide receiver getting cut, and people are debating it regarding, look, we got a 7th rounder who's better than a 2nd rounder. So I love it. I love the debate. I love the manner in which supporters of the Lions will not even use logic to debate what's going on with the team. But this is one of the critical seasons. And yes, we'll start with concerns because this is a football team that's still young in their development. A lot of young players that are going to be asked to do a lot of big things. And I would agree that the biggest thing that gives me pause and concern is the defense. But it's not as it's not as concerning as in years past, where last year we were like, Jeff Okuda, Amani Arwariye, Jerry Jacobs, are they really going to do it? Young rookie Aiden Hutchinson, what can he bring to the table? And then it came to fruition. The secondary was just god-awful, and people lost their jobs. But I agree. I think that going into the season, there are reasons for optimism when you see the defensive line, the young talent, the drastic upgrade in the secondary. But I understand those that will pen the concern that say, look, the Lions, even with Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston, throughout the course of 17 games, only finished in the lower third of the league in their pass rush win rate, and they were god-awful against the run. And the area that kind of dictates that, where you get the most push, is the interior of the defensive line. And they kind of are relying on some young players and some role players to kind of man the ship there. So Aaron Glenn's got a lot to prove. He's the guy for me right now in the crosshairs. He's got to show that, hey, these first couple games, they got to be competitive. You can't be allowing the Chiefs and the Seahawks to just run up and down the field and make your defense look like you can't let your defense get shredded and look like Swiss cheese. So that's my biggest source of concern right now is that defense. I do have more confidence that they will answer the bell and handle business, but I do respect those that bring it up.
See, I have no concerns about the defense.
None?
Defense isn't my big concern at all. My big concern is on the offensive side of the ball. Can this offense go out and perform like it did last year? Can it go out and be better than it was last year? If you look at what the offense did, I feel like performed maybe above its head. And look, maybe that's Ben Johnson being a miracle worker. Maybe Jared Goff has finally put everything together and it's all making sense for him and he's operating at such a high level. Jared Goff last year was a top 5 quarterback, played out of his mind. You mean to tell me that he's going to come back, he's going to have another year just like that? Because that's what they need. They have to get that. And I'm not sure he can deliver that. On top of that, the rushing attack was pretty potent. Now, it didn't pick up a ton of big yards, but it was able to put the ball into the end zone when they needed to. You're bringing in 2 new running backs, and look, I do think those running backs will be better, but again, they've got to get incorporated into the system. They've got to understand what's going on. The guys that you had here last year, they had already had a half a season underneath their belt with Ben Johnson. So there's a lot of new pieces that are going to have to get worked into all of this. If you look at what the offense did last year, I'm not sure they can duplicate it, and that is my big concern because the offense really helped win them some games. Now, look, offense and defense go hand in hand. When the defense kind of figured some stuff out and they started performing, they started obviously getting on a couple of game win streak there, and they looked really, really good. I think with the upgrades that have been done to this defense, you take what they learned from last year. I think this defense is going to be heads and tails above where it was last year. I don't have any concerns about that. Again, my bigger concerns are, can the offense duplicate what it did last year?
See, the reason why you have that trust is the head coach, Dan Campbell, wizard offensively, learned from Bill Parcells and Sean Payton. You got Ben Johnson, who by all accounts going to be a future NFL head coach and is a wizard, somebody that spends time looking at plays, looks at how to create plays that are going to work, very smart, analytical, really understands how to relate to players. I just see a seamless transition, and I think that you kind of can be more confident with the offense because of the fact the offensive line is decent. You have a little bit more of that plug and play with what you got going on, and I do think that David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are an upgrade by at least 15% over what you had in 2022. So with the coaching staff being firmly in place, you kind of removed a couple pieces. I do think the biggest question mark on offense, there are question marks, is how concerned should people be about Frank Ragnow and his health? Obviously, dealing with turf toe is going to be lingering. And without Jamison Williams, who's going to pick up the slack? Who's going to provide that deep threat? Because, yes, smart defensive coordinators will realize, okay, if we can figure out how to stop Jahmyr Gibbs and we figure out ways to limit what Amon-Ra can do, then you could kind of make the offense kind of predictable in regards to pressuring Jared Goff and kind of having your defense kind of stack the box a little bit and pressure the Detroit Lions. And if you don't have that deep game, if you don't have somebody like who they're expecting Sam Laporta to be is somebody that can get yards after the catch and a possession receiver. If that doesn't exactly come out the way in which they see early on, then the offense can kind of become predictable. That deep threat a little bit, maybe it's not as effective, but I know Khalif Raymond will get some deep throws. Amon-Ra is going to get a couple, but I think that Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs are going to get a lot of the underneath intermediate type stuff. But that deep threat, you can't really count on Marvin Jones. He's past his prime. He's more of that possession, third down kind of receiver, move the chains, red zone target, reliable, but he doesn't have separation. Obviously, clearly, those numbers they're out there, that his separation numbers are not exactly elite. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the offense kind of works it out. But I do think that they're going to be pounding the rock. They're going to give the ball to David Montgomery, use that offensive line when healthy to get 4 or 5 yards per rush. And then really the number one thing, that the reason why you want the running game effective is because then Jared Goff, off of that play action, is among the best in the National Football League. You're not concerned at all about the secondary gelling, how this defensive line is going to, if opponents attack up the middle and you, dude, everyone's offensive lines are becoming ginormous. The average offensive lineman is like 335 pounds and athletic, and they want to push the line forward, and everybody's looking for them. And obviously, those that are going to watch film are going to try to run up the middle, really just turn on the tape of the Panthers game and realize, oh boy, if we can get some, win the leverage battle up front, we can probably take advantage of Detroit's defense. That's why hopefully Jack Campbell acclimates well, the linebackers quickly catch up to speed and take the next step forward. I just think that the defense has a lot more, because it's just such a tough thing to accomplish in today's NFL, because really, with how great the receivers are and how great the offensive minds are, basically every play can be completed for 4 yards. Right there, check downs, the routes are so crisp, everybody knows where to be, the timing is spectacular, and everybody offensively just knows how to pick up speed. So for me, I just look at the defense and I say, Jesus, if they can just get to average, and we've said that now for the last 3 years, if they can just get to average, then this football team can really succeed, because I think Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell really know how to put together an offense.
And here's the thing. I think that's the baseline. I think going into the season, they're already going to be starting at average. I don't have concerns about the secondary gelling. I think you've got a ton of really good pros here. Like, you've got a bunch of guys who know their job, know their role, and are going to go out there and do that job. Now, you talk about running up the middle on this defense. I think they've figured a couple things out. I think that Carolina game was a cold bucket of reality for this team, and I think they've made some adjustments. I think Aleem McNeil takes another step forward. I think you have another year with Aiden Hutchinson in this system. That takes another step forward. I also don't think that they're done with adding pieces to this defensive line. I think there's going to be some cuts as camp goes along.
Yep.
And I think there might be a free agent, a really talented free agent, that gets let go by somebody and that can latch on here, and they'll get some production out of him. They'll put him in a spot where he'll win. And I think that's going to help make this defensive line better. But I think currently, as it's constructed on paper, I think the baseline, this team is at least 15, 16. It's no longer at the very, very bottom. I think that's where we start. That's where we come in. And I think that this team has the ability defensively to get into that top 10. I think they have the pieces here where they could be a top 10 defense. I think Jack Campbell can help move this team forward, help this team take that next step. I think he can help clog up the middle, play that Mike linebacker. I think you add, like I said, I believe that they're going to add another piece to this defensive line, and it's probably going to be somebody on the interior. That's what we were looking at as far as the draft went. We thought for sure that possibly Jalen Carter could be an option. Obviously, he was not. That was a guy who I think that when you look at what this team did in the draft, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be compared to him, because it was there for the taking, and they did not. They passed on him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this defense. But like I said, I'm confident this defense is going to be better. I feel very comfortable with this defense going into this year. That being said, I will take my slings and arrows. I thought the defense last year was going to be pretty good, and it started off pretty horrible. And they figured things out as the season went along. And like I said, that really helped them get on a bit of a win streak there. But I don't have any concerns as far as the defense goes right now. I think they've added enough pieces, and I think they're going to add another piece that's going to help put them over the top. And I think that is what's going to help separate and help differentiate this defense compared to where it was last year, compared to where it was 2 years ago. And I think that defense is going to help solidify this team. The offense has to carry its weight, though. And there was this article done by Will Brinson of CBS where he placed Jared Goff in the fourth tier of quarterbacks out there. Now, Jared Goff, since he's been in Detroit, has played out of his mind. Like I said before, Jared Goff was a top 5 quarterback last year. The guy has been amazing. I think he had like 7 interceptions last year. The guy's done nothing but take care of the ball and throw touchdowns. I'm not sure what else you can ask for. I sent you this article. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to really look it over, but he has Jared Goff listed in the fourth tier. And in front of him, he's got guys in the first tier like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. I don't think too many people are going to argue about that. I don't think too many people are going to be upset about that. That makes sense. You look at the next tier. This tier is titled Could Join Them for Next Year. That's joining tier 1. Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts. I think for the most part, everybody's okay there. You might throw a flag on Lamar Jackson because I'm not really sure what Lamar is anymore. You go to tier 3, and this is where I think things get a little bit messy, right? Tier 3, it says intriguing with question marks. It has Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford, Tua Tagovailoa, Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson. I will tell you right now, I will take Jared Goff over every one of those guys. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is on the verge of being washed. Matt Stafford can't stay healthy anymore. Tua is a walking concussion. Justin Fields, he's got potential, but that's just it. It's potential. He hasn't been able to do it. Daniel Jones, I feel like Daniel Jones is like the downgraded version of Jared Goff. Yeah, he's a little bit younger, but I don't feel like he's necessarily anything special. I don't feel like he deserves to be ranked higher than Jared Goff. Deshaun Watson, he looked real bad when he came back from his suspension last year. So maybe he gets things figured out, but he looked really, really bad. Russell Wilson also looked really, really bad last year. Now he's lost some weight, and he's come in. He's got a new coach, new offense. Maybe he gets things worked out. Not sure. I think Jared Goff is better than any one of those guys. And now you have Jared Goff in tier 4. It says you can win with them. Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jared Goff's better than every single one of those guys. I think the Detroit Lions quarterback is better than every single one of those guys, whether it be Dak, whether it be Geno, whether it be Kurt, whether it be Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, or Jimmy G. He's better than all of those guys. To me, Jared Goff really and truly should be last guy in tier 2, first guy in tier 1 or tier 3. So where are you at with this? Do you feel like he's a little bit off base with his ranking? Because I feel like he totally slighted Jared Goff.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look at the gamut of reactions regarding the Detroit Lions. They obviously believe that the sum of the parts are greater than the individual pieces. Jared Goff doesn't get, basically is looked at as an honorable mention by executive scouts, same as Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is crazy. Doesn't even make the top 10 list of wide receivers when you see all their ability and skill set. And I do understand the question marks regarding Jared Goff. They say, well, how much credit does Ben Johnson deserve? Was last season an anomaly? And I understand that people still doubt what Jared Goff can do. But no matter what, you do recognize that Jared Goff has a great offensive line. He has a general manager who built pieces around him. And based on how this writer put together the tiers, it should be tier 3. But in my opinion, Jared Goff, I believe, a tier 2 quarterback, which means that no, he's not going to consistently game in, game out, throw for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and can elevate everybody around him. Because look what happened. Year 1, he didn't have weapons, and he struggled mightily. But many quarterbacks, really in the end, only 2 or 3 in the whole world can accomplish what Mahomes, Burrow, and Josh Allen can do, which is, hey, you don't have the best brand name wide receivers and running backs, and you go out there and elevate everybody and make plays and can make first downs in championship games and Super Bowls with a high ankle sprain. Not many people in the world can do that. So you don't really knock Jared Goff as much as people will for saying that. That's like the rarefied air of the 1% of the entire world. But Jared Goff, given weapons, he's got a first-round wide receiver if he can put the phone down and not place bets, which there's a lot of juicy bets that he can make this year. I mean, he should probably, talk to his friend Willard and say, look, Will, put 10,000 down on the Lions over, and hopefully Willard has a history of betting that's a little bit higher than 5 cents, because that's one way to get a red flag is, we look at Willard's account, and he's bet $1, $2, 50 free bets that he's taken advantage of, and one $10,000 bet. Red flag! It's like, no. Give him some big bets and have a consistent history. Or just, like everybody else, find your friend and give him some cash and have him walk to a teller at a local brick and mortar. It's not that bad. They're not diseased. So we'll figure it out. If Jameson Williams can keep everything together and get on the field week 7, then Jared Goff is going to have one of the speediest wide receivers in the world to pair with one of the best possession receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then the third fastest Madden-rated running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. So Jared Goff has weapons, and the team loves him, and basically his offensive coordinator's like, what do you like? What do you not like? Okay, I'll do more of X, and now you can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that off your play action. So Jared Goff's comfortable, and that is the recipe to get everybody on the same page. And I think Alex Anzalone probably said it correct when he tweeted, because look, even though some people will say, oh, we don't care about ratings and preseason rankings and what people say, they do. They want to see how the NFL world views them. I would peruse it. Maybe would I tweet about it? Maybe in a sarcastic way. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course I would. But Alex Anzalone said, look, these Madden ratings are just a manifestation of how the NFL world and fans view players. And it indicates that they're probably more skepticism, and the Lions are ranked lower than what they are, because I don't think Jared Goff is the 13th best quarterback in the NFL, and no way is Amon-Ra St. Brown 15th to 20th based on scouts and executives. Come on. I just think that he's being judged against those that are like, look, it's safe to say that body type and role, Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown are different receivers, but both excel greatly at what they do. And I think that the Lions, in regards to kind of just how they're viewed nationally by executives and rankings and things like that, I think they're just not drastically. I would put Amon-Ra 9th, and I'd put Jared Goff like 10th. So, but they deserve to be in that list, with that said. Not like they're top 5, but they deserve to be top 10 at their positions. Goff's going to play well. I think that, yes, Goff is a question mark. He is somebody that you wonder how he will handle pressure and different type of looks from defenses, but he showed last year when he was given that challenge to step it up, he played better. So I think that knowing another year with Ben Johnson, another year with this offensive line, will give Jared Goff the upper hand. And those question marks, I think, are answered. So that's why I'm very comfortable with the offense, and I think they'll catch on quickly. It's the defense. It's Ken. I fully expect, and I think I can call my shot now, the Lions will have a 1-point lead, probably 31-30, with about 5 minutes left, and Mahomes is going to have the ball. What happens? That's the scenario. That's the scenario I actually am hoping for. I'm putting it out there. I'm manifesting it for those with elevated thesaurus language in their head. I'm manifesting a 31-30 game with 3 minutes and 1 second on the clock. And they kick it off, and Patrick Mahomes gets it on the 25, and we see what happens. Do the Lions make the play? Does Mahomes scramble? Does he get that 3rd down and 6 when he needs it? Does the pressure come late in the 4th quarter? Or do they back off a little bit and let Mahomes dink it, dunk it, and secure that game-winning field goal? That's going to be the scenario. Book it. That's going to be the scenario. Great game, tight. Maybe the score will be lower if the Lions run the ball and muck it up a little bit, but that's the scenario that needs to happen, because that'll give you the test of where early on what a playoff atmosphere would look like. Winning a game, tight, call on your defense. Do they make the play? And hopefully Aiden Hutchinson makes that swim move and slaps the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand, does the Michael Jackson dance right over his body, and we can light the NFL world on fire with the exceptional Aaron Glenn defense. So that's why I think that nationally you can't expect, cuz you're not going to expect these writers and pundits to rank individually the Lions players as being better than Josh Allen and
Look,
Joe
no,
Burrow.
I get that, but it is weird because they are the hottest team in the NFL right now. They are the team that everybody is predicting to do the next big thing. They are the team that everybody is saying is going to the playoffs and will win a playoff game and is a possible dark horse to make it to the NFC Championship game. And then you look at these rankings and you look at how people evaluate the talent on this team, and it just doesn't line up. It just doesn't make sense. There's another CBS article that we have here where they're saying that Amon-Ra St. Brown is the most overvalued Detroit Lion. I think you can make an argument that he's the most undervalued Detroit Lion. You know, like I guess what they're saying is the sum of all the parts is better than what you have. But all that being said, you've got some studs on this team.
You do.
You've got a quarterback in Jared Goff, who was a top 5 quarterback last year. You've got a guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who you could argue was a top 10 wide receiver last year. Statistically, go and look. The guy was amazing. Amon-Ra St. Brown, if you ask me, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the identity of this offense. He is the persona of what you want this offense to be. Tough, gritty, chip on the shoulder, a guy who's going to go out there and he's going to scratch, claw, and do whatever it takes to sit there and win you a football game. He is a pro's pro. When you as a fan sit down and you talk about what you want your football player to be, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. It is Amon-Ra St. Brown all day long. This is a guy who is still chafed and still upset about where he was drafted. Now 17 other guys went ahead of him. And then you look at these reports, and I love it because it's just more fuel for the fire. It's just more kindling added onto this blaze. You're just throwing tree stumps into this burning inferno right now and just letting it touch the sky. He's got to be so pissed off. For you to come out and say that he's the most overvalued Detroit Lion, you're out of your mind. You're in the deep end. This guy is so underrated. He does everything for this team. He is the face of this offense. He is the dude on offense for this team. And so it is frustrating for me when I see these reports and I see what execs say and I see where he's being placed. And like I said, you look at Jared Goff and what he did last year. You look at what Jared Goff did basically over the course of a year and a half. He's played some of his best football. He's played some of the best football in the NFL, and yet he doesn't get the respect. You look at what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done over the course of 2 years. 2 years, this guy has been a dominant force on offense, and he has done everything that you can ask him to do. He's not just a slot receiver, and I feel like that's what everybody looks at him as. He's just a slot wide receiver. Yeah, he's not the guy who's going to stretch the field completely and get all the way down and take the top off it. That's not his game. But you can put him in different lineups, you can put him in different schemes, and you can get this guy free, and he makes you miss, and he just does so much that is important for this offense. Do you feel like he's overvalued, or do you feel like I'm saying, he's basically the most undervalued Detroit Lion?
Yeah, it's Amon-Ra is important, but I understand where they say, look, you got Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, you got other wide receivers there, and they look at it and they say that, look, the slot receiver, you can basically try and find and replace, maybe not the full production, but you can plug and play. Now, obviously, the skill set you can't diminish of Amon-Ra St. Brown, his reliability, his sure-handedness, his crisp route running, it's just not that easy to replace. But I know in an offensive league, they don't think it's that difficult to try and recycle or find young players that can fit in the slot. There are a plethora of them. But I give Amon-Ra credit for being able to make the game look easy, his ability to work hard, and he's going to continue to work on his routes to get crisper, no wasted motions, to add the deep game to his arsenal. Oh, forget about it. It's going to be great. And personally, I think it's great that they're ranked lower. More fuel to the fire for their motivation to be like, man, I had all these. I'm one of the best receivers at moving the chains. I'm sure-handed. I secured in the past couple years more grabs and receptions than the players in my draft class. So I'm very happy with how it all shook out conceptually, because I do think the Lions are going to be a football team with a chip on their shoulder to prove that everybody's wrong and how they think of them. I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson is like, seriously? You got me ranked 20th as a safety? What the hell's wrong with you guys? And Alex Anzalone posting on Twitter and such and looking at these ratings. So I'm happy. I'm happy with where we're at right now as we head into training camp to write about Jack Campbell, Jared Goff, how Gibbs looks. I think we're going to ask Gibbs about the devalued running back spot, and that'll be a topic we talk about further as the running backs continue to chirp a little bit and start to express themselves publicly regarding, hey, man, we're not just 5-year players and then be discarded. We want to be kind of guys that can stick around till 30, but it may be just one of those positions that gets revamped and looked at in a completely different manner. It's still evolving, so we want to gather as much information as these running backs start to talk and explore the position as a whole. And I can't wait to see Jameson Williams. Everybody wants to see how he looks, how he responds to some criticism, how he has, obviously OTAs and mini camps weren't the best in regards to what you want to see. You wanted to see more. So we hopefully when the pads come on and he can go one-on-one against Jerry Jacobs, one-on-one against Cam Sutton, how that's going to shake out. So tell me, cause one thing Sunday, Monday, you absolutely are excited and thrilled to read about from All Lions and the other great publications that cover the team.
I'm going to be excited to read that the defense looks better than expected and is ready to fire on all cylinders. And I'm going to be excited to read that there's a lot of leadership coming from that secondary, whether it's C.J. Gardner-Johnson, whether it's Cam Sutton. Those guys have taken a hands-on approach and a major role in constructing the mindset and the physicality that this defense is going to bring. That's what I'm excited to read.
Defense, baby. Defense stepping up and handling their business. That's going to be great to see. Because, yeah, I do think Aaron Glenn is the coach that has the most to prove. Many people do believe Ben Johnson's on his way to superstardom as a head coach. And maybe his predecessor or, his successor is in the wings, and we'll look at some of those that maybe could come up and take his job should Ben Johnson end up leaving. But it's going to be fun times, guys, and we'll be all over it. Detroit Sports Podcast, All Lions, will be bringing you inside coverage, analysis, debates, looking at depth charts, looking at everything in regards to the Lions. So make sure you check out at Detroit Podcast. Follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ, and follow the network for all great content. And let us know what you think. If you like you like when we play GM or you hate it, let us know. If you think Sports Illustrated rating Aiden Hutchinson as a breakout player is malarkey because, well, he's already arrived, let us know. We love reading it. Nothing is off limits, and we enjoy the banter, and that's why we've been doing this now for the better part of a decade. And hopefully now, in the second decade of the Detroit Sports Podcast, we can talk about teams like the Lions and the Pistons taking a step forward, and we can talk about
winners. You're talking about winners?
Winners. We're talking about players that have become superstars. Maybe the Pistons got one. Cuz, gotta get your reaction. Is Ausar Thompson underrated? Is he a guy that people said, well, you know what, because he's not the best shooter now, we don't think he's good enough. But boy, he acclimated himself well against the talent. Now, you always have to preface it for those that get excited and love to be very, very supportive and positive about everything. Ausar Thompson did well against those that are probably going to be in the G League and on the fringe of making rosters. But that's what you want to see, is that a guy that looks like there's something there. And he showcased that with great mobility, great court awareness, basketball IQ, defensive prowess, and a shot that can be worked on. And that's all you can ask for as a starting point in today's NBA. Now, if you're going to say, well, the talent level is not the same, no, it's not. Okay? I can sit up here as the old guy, the get off my lawn guy, and say, look, basketball ain't the same. These dudes don't shoot. They want to dribble, they want to make highlight reel passes, and they want to dunk, and they don't want to do the work to shoot. Because if you only need to shoot 32% to make $12 million a year, fuck it, I'm only going to shoot 600 shots and go out on the beach and smoke a cigar in Miami, and I'm going to make $8 million. And, because if a guy like Isaiah Stewart is going to make that much money, you're like, shit. You know what I mean? Whereas for me, $16 million is reserved for a guy that can shoot three-pointers, is great defensively, on the brink of Defensive Player of the Year. But today's NBA, you make 2 out of 10 three-pointers, and you're a good team guy, that could get you a fat long-term contract. So we'll see, but I will say this. My initial impression was, good for you, young man. I think that you acclimated yourself well. You made it so that I'm considering going to a couple Pistons game. Now, I want to see what it looks like in the preseason against NBA-level talent, but ending the summer league with Sasser scoring 40 points was a nice touch too. So the rookies acclimated themselves well, and I'm happy to see what the young chemistry is going to look like with the Pistons. That was my first reaction. What'd you think of Thompson, Detroit Pistons number 5 overall pick, and how he handled his business at the summer league?
So I thought he did a good job in the summer league, and same thing with Marcus Sasser when he put up 40. His big question mark was, can he shoot? Can he score? Because he was supposed to be a defensive juggernaut, essentially, right? That was what he was bringing to the table. He was supposed to be tough on the defensive side of the floor. And same thing with Ausar Thompson. He was supposed to be a defensive guy, and he can score in transition, and he's supposed to be an athletic freak. Here's the thing. I don't know what to make of the NBA Summer League. I don't know what to make of what it is. It is basically rookies, it is second-year guys, and it is guys who are basically here on a team tryout, trying to win basketball games. A lot of times, what it looks like to me is it looks like an elevated AAU game. And look, that is where most of these guys are coming from, so I get that. I'm not sure how much stock you can really put in the NBA Summer League. I just don't know. I'm not ready to buy into Ausar Thompson being a starter. I'm not even ready to buy into him being the sixth man off the bench. Marcus Sasser, I'm not buying into the 40-point performance. I think this was one of those things where you just found a matchup that you liked and you got hot. It'll be interesting to see if these guys are able to be developed, if these guys are able to take these performances that they had this past summer. I think the NBA Summer League is 5 games. Take the performances that you put out there for 5 games and work on these things and get ready, and then show us something in the preseason, and then show us something when opening night rolls around. I'm not ready to buy into this just because the NBA Summer League, I just feel like, is just kind of overhyped. It's just a way to kind of keep the positive vibes moving from the draft and just kind of carrying them over for the NBA. And then you're going to end up getting into preseason here in a couple of months. So I'm not ready to cement anybody. I'm not ready to crown anybody. I'm not ready to even buy into what I've seen. What I will tell you is I think it looks good, right? I think if you had any questions about these guys and why they were drafted, I think this kind of helps explain to you the thought process behind where the organization was going, why the organization took these guys. Look, again, Ausar Thompson's supposed to be a athletic freak, a guy who's supposed to be good on defense. If you go back and you look at the highlights, there were athletic plays. There were good plays on defense. He showed, like you said, a shot that hopefully can be worked on, and that was the thing about him, right? Can he develop his shot? Can he develop what he does, and can he develop a scoring touch? It looks like they might be able to do that. Marcus Sasser, there was not a whole lot really to his offensive game, right? There was not a whole lot of high praise for his offensive game. Well, the guy put up 40. So that speaks well. He's supposed to be a defensive guy. Yeah, he played pretty good on defense, so you get that. Can he hone that shot? Can he develop that shot? We'll have to wait and see. So not trying to ride the fence here. I don't put any stock into what came out of the NBA Summer League, nor the performances. I'm not ready to buy into these guys yet, but I think that if you are looking for a silver lining, it looks like you might have some guys who can be developed, and that's going to fall on the coaching staff. You're going to find out how good your one of your highest paid coaches in the NBA really, really are if he can develop these guys and get some production out of them. So I'm just going to kind of take the wait and see because I do not buy into the Summer League.
Yeah, it's crazy. You mean you're not excited for Imani Bates posting the picture with that little pissant trophy? Celebrate like he did something. Man, what a 5-game stretch with this trophy. I mean, come on. It's worthy of a tweet, not a photo. But I agree. Look, I only caught like 3 of the 5 games, and I read all the coverage from the great reporters in town. Look, it's Summer League. The games are later. It's in Vegas, and you just want to make sure you're – I mean, look. Wembanyama showed up for 2 games, and they were like, "No, we're good." And I love the quote from Wembanyama after game 1. Man, I had no clue what I was doing. It's basically because they're like, okay, pass the ball to this guy and don't look like a fool. And that's about it. There's no intricacy. There's no depth of offensive execution here. It's basically, here's like 4 plays, and let's run 1 set off of each play, and let's call it a day, and don't look like you don't fall flat on your face and look like an unprepared fool. You know what I mean? Don't eat yourself out of the league. Don't date Mariah, some chick named Mariah, and have her go on Twitter and
you know who that is?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm looking at. You know what I mean? I'm just spitballing off the top of my head. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to end up with the lady that's just like, he did this to me and he did that to me, and have more tweets about you than minutes played in the NBA. It's not going to be the thing you're going to want to be doing. You know what I mean? And so that's where I think the Pistons' young players got out of Vegas, and handled their business. So, but if you are a fan of the NBA, there's a lot of great NBA podcasts out there. Isaiah Thomas had a great interview with a local podcast. The content's great. People are in depth. I love now, what I love too is when former Pistons or former players in Detroit go on and they do podcasts with their friends, or former NBA players that are doing podcasts, and they talk about their experiences. And Brown said, one day I was there and I said, hey, I kind of want to take some time off. And the next day I was traded. And everybody's like, okay. And then all of a sudden, now I'm a champion. And I just thought that that's always kind of good because, look, everybody knows that when you're here in town, I love management. Troy's my best friend. I love Monty. He's great. And then they get out of town for 2 weeks and they're like, man, I couldn't stand those dudes. I was there 1 second, they booted me out the next. So I love the NBA content that's out there. There's some really good analysis from those inside the NBA world and those that are getting into broadcasting, talking about the NBA, the Pistons, and what they can be about. So make sure that when the season starts, stay tuned, because we're going to talk about the Pistons. We definitely are in the mix, and we're basketball fans, but we just have a little bit of an older view of how the game should be played. And maybe this is the way that we can really get back to the old Piston style. Defensive, hard-nosed, tough, play well, and hopefully Ivy Duren and Cade can be those stars that elevate the rest of the roster. But bottom line, you need shooters that when the time comes can shoot. And that's, in today's NBA, every team is looking for it. But at the same time, and that's what I love about working with Adam and working with the journalistic minds and those that question things, there are some players that Troy Weaver passed on and left on the cutting room floor and didn't draft that could have helped this team maybe be further along than what they are. The Killian Hayes pick probably set the team back a half a notch and everything like that. The way in which you've put together this roster with a lot of bigs, adding Wiseman, kind of taking time away from those that are developing, giving minutes, and the rotations that Dwayne Casey used weren't ideal at certain times. The offensive identity never got picked up off the ground. So there's a lot of things to debate and to look at. So I'm excited to talk about the Pistons and the Red Wings as they add new talent, and we can see it finally this fall. There's going to be some level of excitement and buzz. Speaking of buzz, cuz you're interested in the Women's World Cup. Now, I'm a soccer fan, but right now we're in the midst of buying season with the MLS and we call it transfer windows in the major world of soccer, in the Premier League and the Spanish leagues and the European leagues. It's all about who's getting the big transfer fees, who's getting bought and sold. Pulisic got shipped off. The drama regarding Pulisic in Chelsea is now being documented in great publications. He got shipped to Italy and is no longer part of the Premier League. But the Women's World Cup, to me, and I'm fascinated. I was a little bit surprised you put this for a topic, but I know the World Cup is here. My interest level is not as high as it would be for the Men's World Cup, where I still have 50 hours on the DVR of stuff that I've watched. The game, the Argentina game, was still among the best 5 soccer games I think I've ever watched. Women, I'm aware that America, Canada, and is it China are the best 3. I don't know. I'm not interested. I don't follow it. I know basically the fringe drama with some of the players at the top, but in the end, I always kind of assume the United States has a decent female team, and if they lose, it's usually something that makes news. But for me, obviously, on the verge of training camp, Pistons, Wings, a lot of other stuff that I'm interested in. For me, it's not exactly on the radar. What's going on with this World Cup? Who should I be watching?
I mean, obviously, the women's United States, they're going for a three-peat. This is something that hasn't been done since, I think, like 1930, whether it was men or women. This is a big deal if you're a female soccer fan, or if you're just a soccer fan in general, or if you're just a United States fan, because, like I said, this is something that hasn't been done in an incredibly long time. almost a century. It has been, I think 1930 was the last time that a team has won back-to-back World Cups. So they are going out there and trying to do that. Yes, the United States women are generally number one. I believe Japan usually has a pretty good team. Sweden has a pretty good team as far as the females go. The French women, I think, are pretty good, as well as obviously the Brazilian women are usually pretty good. There's usually a bit of a slugfest between the U.S. women and the Brazilian women. So look, this is exciting to me. I love soccer like you love soccer, and I love World Cup soccer more than anything. Whether it is men's or whether it's women's. But I get super pumped up for the Women's World Cup because, let's just be honest, they are heads and tails better than the men. And whether it's the level of competition in the rest of the world, they just haven't caught up to the U.S. women, or it's just that the men haven't caught up to the rest of the world in men's soccer. I love, obviously, if you're a fan of the United States, you love watching a winner. And the FIFA women's team is just so damn good. On top of that, it's going to be Megan Rapinoe's final hurrah. So she's supposed to be retiring, and she's absolutely great and incredible. So I'm pumped up for this. I'm going to be watching as many of these games as possible. I generally enjoy watching women's soccer. I tend to find it to be fascinating, just because there's some subtle nuances, some things that are a little bit different with the way the men and the women play. Usually with the men, there's a lot of action in and around the 18-yard box, and there's a lot of pressure that usually gets applied, and there's a lot of play that happens in the midfield. A lot of times with the women, it's a lot of plays to just kind of stretch everything, and it's a lot of stuff from the outside in. So just some subtle differences watching men's soccer compared to women's soccer. But I am pumped up for it. I'm excited. U.S. women play Vietnam on Friday night. I believe it's at 9 o'clock is when that game will get started, I think. They're playing over in New Zealand and Australia because obviously you can't play in the Middle East because you're women and you'd have to wear clothes and be covered from head to toe. So, it's what it is. That's why they're playing over there, which I think, look, it's going to be great. I think New Zealand and Australia are going to be fantastic host countries. I'm more pumped up, like I said, for the Women's World Cup than I am for the Men's World Cup. And just because I know going into this, the United States women should make a deep run, if not win the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
For the men, we're just excited if they get past the group stage.
Right.
So
Score a goal. Score a goal.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pumped up for this. I'm surprised that you're not more invested in this. I'll be honest with you. Last night, I was laying in bed, and I stayed up till I think it was about 11 o'clock. And I get up extra early every morning. And so I was kind of feeling it this morning. But I watched about 2 hours of preview just covering all the teams that are in the World Cup, just watching who has best odds, who has better chances, kind of how they play, who the best player is on their teams, who does everything kind of run through, their coaching staffs. Like, I watched 2 hours of this, man, and I was fascinated by it. And I think I still had another 30 minutes I could have watched, but I had to shut the TV off and go to bed. So I'm pumped up for it.
See, I'm pumped up for British Open week, man. I want to see the
I'm pumped up for that too.
I want to see these dudes deep in the bunker trying to whack it out. So I think it's going to be great. I love the Royal Liverpool. It's crazy. And let's see if Rory can end this decade-long streak here of not winning a major.
Rory.
Rory. And the drama.
I was so annoyed that he won last weekend.
Yeah.
I was like, come on, are you for real? This fraud.
Okay.
I'm not a fan, dude. I am not a fan of Rory.
Well, speaking of frauds, the Tigers still are keeping people interested.
Nice segue.
But Javi Baez took a mental rest, which is good for him. He needs to kind of rest his. I think when you see catchers line up 5 feet away from the plate and Javi's still swinging at it, it's just, look. It's a team that's 10 games under 500. Here's a temperature check. Nice series win against Seattle, but dropping games against Kansas City. It's a team that basically is 10 games under 500. You see Spencer Torkelson. It's good that you're able to at least start to see some bats. Kerry Carpenter. Okay, you got 3 players now. Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green. And for me, honestly, my interest level greatly now has been in Toledo. I like what they got going on down there. They got Hunter Malloy. They got a bunch of young cats down there that are playing really well. Keith is a player that everybody's excited about. So while the big club is, winning some games, losing some games, and obviously the big question mark is, what does Scott Harris think of all this, and is he going to sell or status quo? The Miners are decent to look at. The Mud Hens are doing okay. They got, obviously it was good to have Maton go down there, and he's come back a little bit better and productive a little bit more. But here's the struggle. It sucks because now you're starting to see Scope. He got let go. He got whacked. You realize that the team is going to get deconstructed little by little, and you just got to add more talent. So I look at the team. It's interesting to watch in regards to just minor development of different players here or there. But collectively, it's just the biggest concern I think I have is the closer is up and down. He's not as consistent the last 2 months that I would like in a closer. And I ask myself, how does Scott Harris look at this puzzle? There's no way he's going to add. That would be silly. I don't think they're hot enough. They would have had to basically win every game out of the All-Star break to be able to justify adding. I think some people are wondering, does he just stay status quo? I think that, Scott, you got to kind of not make the mistake that Alavila made, similar to Fulmer. You got to find ways to deal Rodriguez. You got to find a way to address the Javi Baez situation, maybe Lang, and maybe a player that you can kind of players you can move on from to add talent. So that's where I stand with the Tigers. They're still interesting, but not enough to where my hope level is, even in a shitty, crappy division in the Central. It's a baseball team that has 4 or 5 players that you can check in on in regards to their productivity, but losing games to the Royals and having a lead and then blowing it is just, it's just a team that needs a lot more talent. And I think you get that talent, and we'll have this discussion further in further episodes. You get that by making trades. You see which teams need some help in certain areas with arms and bats, and you add 2 or 3 players in each trade that are ranked in their prospect system, and you start stocking Toledo and Double-A with some talent. That's how I look at it. They're still worthy of attention and a temperature check, but barely in my mind.
Yeah, see, I think the problem with the Tigers is they're bipolar, right? You go out, you have a nice series against Seattle, and then you come back and, you, like you said, you drop games to the Royals. So it's hard to really know what this team needs to do or what this team actually needs. So as we approach the trade deadline, I think Scott Harris has a big decision to make, right? Like, if this team is going to continue to win games like they did when they were in Seattle, then I think that makes the decision a little bit harder. You can go out and maybe acquire some talent. And like you said, the team, the roster as it's constructed is going to be deconstructed. But I think you can add some pieces. But with what you're getting right now, where this team is going and they're blowing games to the Royals, look, if I'm Scott Harris, this season's just kind of a wash. I'm just using it to evaluate what I've got. I'm trying to figure out guys that I want to build around. I'm trying to figure out guys that I can trade away to get other assets. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. There's not too much that you can really do. And the problem is this division is so bad. And even when the Tigers play poorly, they happen to just kind of linger. They're just kind of there, right? It's almost like being in no man's land. You know, when we talk about making a push for the playoffs and how if you're, I don't know, like 8-8, 7-9, 9-7, it's usually just not good enough. You're somewhere in the middle. You're not good enough to quite get into the playoffs in the NFL, and you're obviously not getting a top draft pick. You're drafting somewhere lower. That's kind of what these Tigers are. They're like somewhere in the middle, right? Like, this division is so bad. Even when they go and they drop games, they're not really losing anything. They're not really losing any positioning. They're like still 5-6 games out, which you have a good week and you have a really nice weekend. Next thing you know, you're competing again for the division. So it puts Scott Harris in a really tough spot. And look, if I'm Scott Harris, if I'm looking at the way this team is performed since the All-Star break, I'm going out and I'm calling people and I'm saying, look, what do you guys want? Make me an offer and let's do business here, because I've got needs. You've got needs. I can help you in your pursuit in the playoffs, and you can help me for my pursuit to make the playoffs possibly next year. So let's have this conversation. And that's kind of where I'm at with these Tigers. I didn't believe in them from the get-go, and nothing has really changed. Like, nothing has changed at all for me. The division is still horrible. The team still is inconsistent, goes out, wins games that they should lose games that they should win, and you're just kind of back at square one. You don't really know what you have here with a whole lot of anything. I am surprised at how bad Tarek Skubal has been pitching. So, like, that's a bit of a concern. I was really hoping he would come back and he would show some glimmer of what he was a couple of seasons ago, and you're just not really getting that. So, look, this team, we're going to continue to do this temperature check, but I don't think it's going to get much better than what we're at right now. And I think as the trade deadline approaches, if I'm Scott Harris, I'm looking to move assets. I'm looking to move guys to get other things in here to help facilitate what's going to happen next year. I've got my eyes basically set on the 2024 season, and that's what we're going to be doing business in.
Man, that was a great hour of talking sports. That half hour talking Lions flew by. I feel like we could talk 4 hours about everything, and it's great that we have this platform to be able to kind of break it all down, explore everything that's happening in the world of sports. Make sure, again, you follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Hit us up. Any questions? You know that if you have a question you want asked to Dan Campbell, I will ask the question probably Saturday afternoon. If you have a question for Dan Campbell, what would it be? I maybe even pick one of them. That's the best part about being a conduit to the fans, is that you guys got somebody that's there at Allen Park, going to be watching Jameson Williams up close, going to be watching everything that's going on, going to be on the field, checking things out, and giving you the fairest analysis possible. Keeping it real, as they say for the young people. Keeping it real in the world of Detroit sports. We've been doing that since 2013. For the Jock, Adam Strozinski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Lots of great sports this weekend. You got a great week of wrestling. You got the British Open. You got the Tigers, and you got all the Lions coverage. So much great things now. Really, slow. Sports has been slow, but it doesn't feel like it's been as dreadful or as slow as it's been in years past. And you want to know why? It's because you guys in Detroit are the greatest fans, and you'll talk about anything. And that's why it's fun to fire up the microphones every single week and fire up the Doc and Jock podcast. Podcasting time is now over. Let's check back in next week, next Thursday, on the latest and greatest edition of Doc and Jock.